David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another review. Today, I have something for you rather different. I was contacted by a company based out of Leeds in the UK by the name of MetMo, which is short for Metal in Motion. The company has launched several products via Kickstarter. They had a fidget gear, and they had a product called the Cube, which looks rather interesting. Their latest Kickstarter project is a pen, and they wanted to know if I wanted to check it out, and I said yes. While it is not a fountain pen, it is certainly unique and different than anything else I've seen before, so I felt it was worthwhile to take a closer look. Their stated goal with this project was to create the ultimate fidget pen. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and features of the MetMo pen, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. Were they successful in their goal of creating the ultimate fidget pen? In order to find out, please join me over here at camera 2. So here is the MetMo pen. The two distinct features you'll notice right away are the dual-threaded diamond screws as well as the brass nuts. The pen is offered in two different materials, aluminum as well as brass. This one here being the brass. This brass model is rather heavy. You can see here, just with the scale, that this pen alone is 103 grams. Now, the aluminum version comes in at about 32 grams, so significantly lighter. Now, just to compare, this pen is fairly equal in weight to a Lamy Safari, and then also a Lamy 2000, and a Pilot Metropolitan, and a Faber-Castell Loom. You can see that those combined come to a 102 grams, so fairly close to that. Then let's go ahead and do some quick size comparisons. With those pens that we just saw, here it is with a Pilot Metropolitan. So you can see this is a rather large pen. And here it is with the Lamy Safari. And then here it is with the Lamy 2000. And then here it is with the Faber-Castell Loom. And then finally, something that is basically the same size. Here it is with a Namiki Emperor. And when you go ahead, let me go ahead and put this right next to it. When you have this uncapped, and since this is actual ballpoint, that's going to be the exact size of it. You could see it is even a little bit larger than the Namiki Emperor, at least in regard to length. Okay. Let's go ahead and get to the meat of this pen. First of all, this is what the screw looks like. And you can see here on the inside that the threading is a bit thicker and at a higher angle than a standard nut. I just grabbed one out of the garage, and you can see this is a standard nut, and you can see how the threading is only slightly angled, and that you can see how it's much wider here. And then in comparison, you can see that both of these nuts here are threaded opposite. So one goes to the right and one goes to the left. Okay, let's get to the meat of this pen, the actual fidget aspect. You can operate the pen in a couple of different ways. You could have one screw on here, and the screw can enter on either side of the pen. It can either enter on this side or it can enter on this side. And what you can do is you can turn the pen up and down and let gravity take over. It is rather satisfying. Now, let's go ahead and put the second nut on here. And you can see that they both spin in opposite directions and make their way down. Sometimes they get a little bit caught up. I'm trying to do it at an angle where you could actually see it. And if you are not careful, they will get caught up on the end here. But let me put my fingers on the end so they don't go down far now. And you can see how they both turn like that. And it is rather satisfying. It is a bit mesmerizing, though it is a little bit on the loud side. It's not like you could be sitting in a meeting playing around with this without drawing some attention. As I mentioned, sometimes it gets a little caught up on the end, but you can go ahead and kind of just give it a nudge and they get working again. Then also you could put them in the middle. So let's go ahead and put them in the middle here. And then you could hold on to the screws and then go ahead and move them in and out. And that actually moves the pen. Just like that. This would not be a good feature to have on a fountain pen, as the centrifugal force would put a kind of basically spit ink everywhere. But with this being a ballpoint like this, that it isn't an issue. Now, there's actually an additional item you can purchase with this pen, which is a tube. And the tube has its own fidgety properties that you could play around with. The nuts are a little bit loose on here. They do have a little bit of play. I'm not a mechanical engineer, and I don't know if having a lower tolerance would inhibit the nuts to spin down the barrel. But it would be nice if they were just a little bit tighter on here. Now let's go ahead and take these nuts off and have a look at the diamond pattern. Here on the barrel, and get a closer look at that. There we go. You could see that it's pretty cool. It does have kind of peaks that are rather pointy and fairly sharp. Maybe not necessarily sharp, but very grabby. I kind of liken it to the teeth on a file. You could see here on the end where the pattern kind of diminishes on both ends, and that's so that it can act as the entry and exit point for the nuts. I had mentioned that this is a ballpoint. In order to extend the nib, what you do is you utilize this back portion here, which the company calls the nib ejector. Let me just go ahead and take this piece out. Now you can see here that it has been hollowed, and it's hollowed all the way down. I think that was done in an effort to reduce the weight. A solid brass piece here would have added even more heft to this pen. And then inside we have the refill. This pen accepts Parker style refills. You go ahead and put it in here, and then you go ahead and screw in the end, and the act of screwing it in actually pushes it out the other side for use. Now, I have found this to be a little squeaky. Let me do it here. You can hear it is a little bit squeaky. Now, I don't know if you could oil that up a little bit or put a little something on there in order to, a little lubricant in order to not make it be so squeaky. Another thing is that when the end is totally screwed down, I think aesthetically it looks nice, but the vast majority of the time the nib won't be extended. So the vast majority of the time it's going to be back in this state, which I don't feel is quite as visually attractive. As I showed you previously, this brass version is very heavy, and I find this long tapered section to actually be comfortable, and I can maintain a decent grip on this pen. Now, the first issue I found is that you can't comfortably operate this pen with the nuts in place. So if you had the nuts in here, let me go ahead and put them on here. If you had the nuts in here, they kind of get in the way. Even no matter where they're at, they kind of get in the way. So when you use the pen, you actually have to take these off and put them someplace, which is a little bit of annoyance. That's a fairly minor issue. But the other issue I feel is a bit more significant. And that would be these threads. They're rather pointy and fairly sharp. During the act of writing, as the pen moves, it kind of physically hurts the inside of my hand. It kind of feels like a file rubbing against me right here, and it's not very pleasant. The pen is very well balanced, and it does feel very unique in the hand. I just feel that using it for an extended writing session would literally cause you bodily harm as the grooves kind of sawed away at one of the most delicate parts of your hand. So let's actually go ahead and do a bit of a writing sample. So I'm going to go ahead and extend this down. And what we have is the MetMo. They just call it the MetMo pen. And the ink, this is just a Parker cartridge. It's a black ink, so we'll just say Parker style. Parker style refill. So while I was writing with that, I will say it wasn't moving as much. Now, if you move it like this, if you're kind of a heavy mover, then it's really going to rub up against that. While when I was writing, it wasn't moving as much. Maybe I was trying to being a little bit more conscious about it to not move it so much, just because I knew after a while it would be unpleasant. That even if you aren't necessarily moving it so much, the tactile feeling is a little bit rough on there, even when it's not necessarily kind of sawing away at your hand. Okay, let's put these nuts back on here. So, that there are varying levels of the Kickstarter program. I'll put a link to it in the notes below. Essentially, if you would care for an aluminum version, it's around $100, and the brass version is around $175. On both the aluminum and the brass versions, these bolts you receive here are brass. Now, when judging how I feel about this pen, I feel I have to divide my thoughts into two different categories. Judging it as a fidget toy and then on its usability as a pen. In regard to a fidget toy, I feel it's very cool. I think it operates as advertised. I've been playing around with this in my office at work, and it is very satisfying to play around with. I do wish it were a little bit quieter, but I do like that there's more than one way to fidget around with it. It gets high marks from me in regard to the fidget aspect of the pen. But in regard to the actual use of this as a writing device, I feel it to be a bit fundamentally flawed. The bottom line for me is that after a while, it kind of physically hurts to use this pen, other than just for a quick note. And even for that, it's not particularly comfortable. I like the looks, but not the functionality. I'll put a link in the notes below where you can see the additional details on this Kickstarter. The project so far has been very successful. The last time I checked, it's raised almost $120,000 and had over 600 backers. I believe the project goes until the close of September, or the end of September. Okay, until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.